Hey, Miss W here. Going to give you some help with Math 7 on the 4.12.1 assignment. So I am not going to give you answers, but I'll give you examples or I'll give you hints. So you started with number 3 for your request. So if you're estimating benchmarks, an example would be, I have a fraction 16 over 18. Is 16 eighteenths, is that closer to 1 18th, which would probably be 0? Or is it closer to 18 eighteenths? So I can see 16 is closer to 18, so that benchmark would be 1. Then I would do the same thing for the number 1/9. Is 1/9 closer to 1/9, which would be 0, or is it closer to 9/9, which would be 1? Well, I can see that it actually is that, so this would represent 0. So 1, in this case I'm adding, plus 0 would equal 1. Moving on to examples there are several examples like this, so this one example will help you with more than these numbers, but these are the numbers I found. So if you're adding or subtracting mixed numbers or fractions, you do not have to get improper fractions, you just get common denominators when you add or subtract fractions. So I'm taking this first one. I chose to line these up vertically because that's what I like to do for mixed numbers. So I'm going to bring the 6 over, and I have to get a common denominator. I'll bring my 2 over. 10 and 8, I already know that the least common multiple is going to be 8. Nope, it's going to be 40. Huh, I didn't know that. So 40. So if I were doing 8, to find that, least common multiple is 8. There's 8. 16 times 3 is 24. 32. 4, and then 40. And then for 10, and I would keep going if I needed to. 10, 20, 30, 40, I could go up here to 48, whatnot. But I can see 40 is the least common multiple. So I'm going to put 40 as my denominator. So if I'm going too fast, you can always pause and rewind this video. So 8 times what gives me 40? That's 5. And if I multiplied the 5 on the bottom of the fraction, I have to do it to the top. So 7 times 5 is 35. 10 times what gives you 40? That's 4. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 1 times 4 is 4. And now I can go ahead and subtract. So subtracting 35, take away 4, I get 31 over 40. Take 6, I've got my 6 here, take away my 2, and I've got 4. I would check to see if this would reduce. In this case, it doesn't, so that would be your final answer. So just on a side note, remember when you add or subtract, you have to get common denominators. All right, so this example is like 5, and you have lots of multiplying and dividing in here. Same concept. If it's already a fraction, don't worry about it. You don't have to change anything. If it is a mixed number, you have to make it an improper fraction. So if I'm looking at this first example here, I've got 2 and 2/5. Remember, to make it a mixed number, you take your denominator and multiply the whole number, which is 10, and then you add the numerator, which is 2. So this one is 12 over 5. I bring down the multiplication sign, it does not change. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 plus 7 is 15. So I get 15 over 8. When you are multiplying and dividing, you just multiply numerator by numerator and denominator by denominator. If you had to explain this, you would just say what you did. You would set up your problem there, and I'm going to do 12 times 15 in the calculator because I do not want to do the math. So 12 times 15. So I get 180. And in Math 7, you can use a calculator, but you have to be able to explain your process. And then 5 times 8 is 40. And if I were to reduce that, I would look for the common denominator where I can see 10 already is 1. So I would take that 0 out right away. So I would have equals 18 over 4, which reduces to by 2 each, so 9 over 2. And if I were looking for a mixed number, 2 goes into 9 4 times with 1 left over. So your final answer would be 4 1/2. So again, multiplying, dividing, you do not get a common denominator, but you have to make sure they're improper fractions if they're not fractions already. I'll show you a division one later. So on number 7, I really didn't want to give you an answer on this, so I just want you to remember this. When adding different signs, you subtract. So this is your examples in fractions, but if I take 4, a negative 4 minus a 3, remember this one keeps. You change the subtraction to addition, and you change the sign following. So then you would just add those. If you're doing different signs, so say I have 6 minus 9, remember, same thing. Keep, change, and change. So now you are subtracting. When you have different signs, you subtract. So 9 take away 6 is 3. The number 9 itself is bigger than 6, so I keep the negative sign. So moving along, again, you can pause this if I'm going too fast. I just didn't want this video to be 20 minutes long. But I'm so glad you asked. All right, so example number 10. We have to get common denominator again because I'm adding or subtracting. So I'm going to look at this subtraction, and that's going to stay the same. A common denominator, I already know for 5 and 4, I don't have to do my list, is 20. And then 5 times what gives me 20? And the answer is 4. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times what gives me 20? The answer is 5. So what I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 1 times 5 is 5. And then you just subtract the numerators. And 12 take away 5 is, let me think, 7, I think. 7. Yeah, 7. Over, remember, your denominators don't change when you're adding and subtracting. You cannot reduce it, so that would be your answer. On number 13, it is a word problem. I think you're going to have to look at the keywords in there and decide if you're going to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Sorry, I'm not going to give you help on that, but it's the same concept. If they're mixed numbers, you change them. If you're dividing or multiplying, you change them to improper fractions. If you're adding or subtracting, you just get a common denominator. All right, number 14, here's your hint. The word of means what in math operations? Does of mean add, subtract, multiply, or divide? So if you don't know, look that up before you take your test. Number 15, here's an example of multiplication. And I'm multiplying a whole number by a fraction. Remember, we're going to make that whole number a fraction if they're not already fractions. And then we multiply straight across. And denominators same way. This is in simplest form, so that is the answer there. So again, multiply and divide, you do not have to get a common denominator, but if it's a mixed number, you have to make it an improper fraction. And here's a quick reminder on how to divide. Again, if it's a mixed number, you make it an improper fraction. Then, so we've got our fractions here. The first number comes down. The division changes to multiplication. And then you do the reciprocal. I'm just going to put recip. Recip of this. So in other words, 3 over 1. And now you have your problem set up. You multiply straight across, 6/5, and that is an improper fraction. 5 goes into 6 one time with 1 left over. And there you go. So remember those steps for division. I'm not telling you the answer, what the cups and fluid ounces. You need to find out before you take how many ounces are in a cup. So look that up if you don't know. And then if you're converting this, what makes sense when you find how many ounces are in a cup? Are you going to add these numbers, multiply, divide, or subtract? Look at example before you do this one. I didn't want to show you this one because it kind of like sets up the answer for you, and I don't want to give you answers because you're smart, and I know you can do this. All right, so 24. Again, how many inches are in a foot? Inches in a foot. You find that out. Then you're going to decide whether you're going to multiply, divide, add, or subtract the inches in a foot. And you can look at examples in the lesson if you need it. Question 25. I skipped some of these because some of these are redundant. So again, you're going to have to decide if you're going to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. But the keywords in this one, if you remember keywords at all, how much left? So if you start with an amount, oh, I like that, how that looks on there. I'm going to make a tornado. So how much left means, just think about that. I've got $5 and I give you $2. How much is left? What would you use? Add, subtract, multiply, or divide. All right, 26. All right, you know how to explain the steps of finding the common denominator. Okay, here's your hint. Do you use least common multiple? I gave you an example of finding the least common multiple earlier in this video. All right, so there you go. There's your big hint for 26, because that's the essay one. It's not real wordy, you just have to know how to do it. 27. This isn't hard either, but you need to know how many ounces are in a pound. When you get that information, just like the other ones, look at the examples beforehand. Are you going to add, subtract, multiply, or divide those numbers? So I hope this is very helpful. I hope so. I wish you well. You got this because you're so smart. You got this. Thank you for asking. Let me know if you need anything else. Good luck.